Welcome to Leadership and the Tarot. My name's Nicole. I'll be your guide on this journey. I'm so glad you've joined us. Let's jump in. Hello, friends. Glad that you are here today. So let's go ahead and jump into our card and the book that was inspired by the card for today. So, the card for this week was the Sun. So the Sun is a major arcana card. Here we have the sun being down. We have 4 girasoles, sunflowers in the background representing the 4 suits of the tarot. There's a child on a white horse representing purity and our own inner child. And because of this book, because of this card, the book that I chose this week is Transcend, the New Science of Self-Actualization. And this was a book that, as I started to really dive into the sun and what does it mean, I was sort of thinking about we already covered some of these things around what the sun means and sharing our gifts when we were talking about StrengthsFinder, and we had been invited by the magician to think about the magic and the skills that we bring in order to create beautiful things in the world, and how we should really tap into our strengths in order to be our most authentic and powerful selves. Then I thought, okay, so what's another layer that we can talk about that the sun taps into? And the book and Transcend really came up for me, one, because it talks about really becoming your full self. So it's not even just about your strengths. It's about, as you realize your full self, how does knowing yourself actually create the ability for you to connect more fully with others? And that's what they talk about in this book, really, is the idea of self-actualization is understanding oneself in order to understand how you are actually connected to everyone else in the world and beyond in the world, the people who came before us and those who will come after us. So this book is very research heavy, has a bunch of studies connected to it. So if that's something that you're looking for, I liken it a little bit to The Body Keeps the Score. Just makes a lot of references to other studies have been done. So a great reference if you're doing any of this work just around self-actualization and studies around how we get to know ourselves. I think something that was really interesting from this book is that the author addresses Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This book really comes from some of the later writings from Maslow and actually invites us into deconstructing what many of us have seen in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is that triangle shape. And we, talk about, we can't get here until we get here, and really helps us understand that actually Maslow didn't create that triangle. That was someone taking his ideas and putting it into a visual for people to engage with. So if you do work around Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you're an educator or you're in some sort of care work, people care work, you might be really interested in seeing another perspective and how, another way in which we can explore and understand Maslow's work. So highly recommend. Great book. Lots of great assessments and evaluations as well. Not necessarily fully in depth, but good sets of questions for you to sit and reflect with as you're thinking about what does it mean to get to know myself better. And that brings us into, again, the sun. So the sun really invites us into sharing our gifts with the world, sharing our full selves with the world, shining out and not hiding anything about us, because when we are true about who we are and we really know ourselves, that is when we can best serve humanity. And again, not just humanity, all beings, because we're choosing the state of being rather than doing, or rather than trying to become something we're not. And so I think the sun really invites us into self-study and making space to get to know yourself. And my question here for you, all of you, is how much time do you spend every day, week, month, season, really getting to know yourself? And as leaders, I think this is incredibly important because we are creating cultures where we are asking people, we start hearing more and more like, yeah, bring your whole self to work. But are we really creating cultures where people can bring their whole selves to work? So if we're saying this and we're not actually living it or doing it, what harm might we be causing? So this is an answer to, if you're going to say bring your whole self to work, well, do people even know who their whole selves are? And most importantly, you as a leader, do you know who you are? Have you taken time to really get inside of your body and of your mind and to ask yourself these questions? What is most important to me? What do I value most in my life? How do I want to spend the rest of my days? What are things that bring me immense curiosity and awe and inspiration? And really sitting with those things, because the first thing that comes up likely isn't really the thing. It's the thing that you've been socialized to say. And it's not just the things that bring us joy that we need to understand. It's really understanding the parts of us that we might see as our darker sides, the real challenges for us, the mindsets that we hold, the narratives that we carry, and being honest about those as well. Because when we are pretending that those narratives don't exist, those things are still living inside of us, and they're often controlling our behaviors. So how can we start to be more honest with ourselves around the challenges, the difficult emotions that we face, and what are our behaviors when those things arise? And I'm just going to say, I don't think you can do that while you're also trying to do your job. If you're trying to balance a budget and get to know yourself in the same 30-minute period, I think one thing is going to outweigh the other. And often when we're talking about our workplaces, it's going to be the act of doing, what business are we doing right now? So how do we carve out really intentional self-study time to get to know ourselves? And what kind of spaces do we need to be creating in our lives for that to be productive? Can we do it at the office? Can we do it in our working spaces? Or is that place, the way that it's set up now, not conducive to me doing that? Also, doing it in authentic ways. Really being mindful of when we try to bring self-study practices into our meetings and into our workspace, if it's inauthentic, if it's not intentionally facilitated and the space is carved out and held sacred, it's likely going to have a negative impact. So really being thoughtful. If I'm going to create spaces where people can engage in self-study and self-reflection, what needs to be true about the spaces? And the best way you're likely going to find an answer for that is ask people. I know I bring that a lot in this channel is, do you want to know information? You're likely going to need to ask people. So I think there are a couple things that I would like for us to walk away with from this as a few tangible steps or things to be mindful of when we are doing this work of self-study. One strategy of doing self-study is engaging in those personality, strengths finder, sort of self-reflection assessments. Now, let's go with the be mindful piece. What I would not recommend is to give those assessments and then tell people, and this is who you are. I find that rarely has a positive impact and often leads people who maybe don't identify with the way that it came back, feeling sort of jaded and like you're trying to tell them who they are. But instead, engaging in those assessments and using that data as a way to start dialogue. And that can be internal dialogue, that can be dialogue amongst peers, that can be used for coaching work, that can be used amongst a team. Just really thinking about these personality tests are not meant to tell us who we are. Rather, they're meant to help us shine a light into pieces of us that maybe we are a little less aware of, and give us space to explore what that might mean for us and talk about the emotions and the things that are coming up as these descriptors are there. So again, these personality tests, the StrengthsFinder test, they are not meant to create sensations that people are being pigeonholed or put into certain categories. When used well, they are really powerful ways for people to engage in some introspection and then some shared meaning making with their peers. The second piece that I would say is really finding time for yourself to be in awe, to practice curiosity. And what that looks like is behaving sort of childlike, going out in nature and really staring at trees or flowers or bugs. It's looking up into the night sky and being so taken away by the stars. It's watching people be in relationship with each other and really creating that connection. How are you finding places to just stop and admire the world that is happening all around you? To take yourself out of some sort of importance, or that what you're doing is the most important thing, and really open your mind to all of the beautiful, magical things that are happening around you. And again, this seems really simple, like, oh yeah, of course I can just go outside, but can you turn your mind off from the things that you need to do and to really be present and admiring and being curious about all the beautiful things that are going on around you. And then I think the final thing that I would say is really powerful is sharing your strengths and your weaknesses and doing that honestly. And figuring out, how do you do that? How do you be human with other humans? And knowing that when we are human, when we express that to ourselves and we make that open, that allows other humans to be human with us as well. And right before we go out and share all of our strengths and weaknesses with everyone, going internal to think about really, what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? How do I want to be honest about those things? And that work can be really, really important because it allows us to develop compassion. When we can see those things in ourselves, those imperfections, be honest with ourselves that we are not perfect and we make mistakes. And it doesn't mean that we're not good at people. It's like we're good-ish people. And we hold biases and we hold isms in our beings because we grew up in this society. And so anyone who acts as though they get to walk around with none of these things is being ignorant to themselves. And therefore, that is how they're moving out in the world. So being really, truly honest with yourself. Where are some of my challenges? Where are some of my blockages in my mind? And giving yourself space to appreciate those things because they're part of you. And then also think about, if I carry these things, what might be true about other people? If I carry mindsets and beliefs about myself, if I'm not always a perfect parent, what compassion might I have for other people? So I hope that today was useful for you, and that you're walking away with something inspiring, or maybe just another question. If you have any questions or ideas, please go ahead and drop those in the comments. I would love to see what came up for you today, and or other books or research that you're working on around what it means to do self-study and becoming the best version of yourself. Thanks for joining, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next time.